Hi, welcome to my channel. In today's video, I'm going to be talking about the books that I plan to read for April of this month. So the first book I want to talk about is Don Quixote. I don't know a ton about the novel, but on a high level, Don Quixote is about a man who has read loads of romantic books that deal with sort of this knight in shining armor, and it has influenced his idea and conception of what romantic relationships are supposed to look like. And so, heavily influenced by these sorts of books, he goes on a long journey. That's really all I know or understand about this book. It is over 1,000 pages long. It doesn't have a great rating on Goodreads. It's under 4 stars, so I have a feeling it's going to be a little bit of a slog, but fingers crossed I can get through this month. The second book I want to talk about is actually a play, and that is Lysistrata by Aristophanes. So this is an ancient Greek play. The plot of the play is that the women in ancient Greece decide to withhold sex in the hopes of this bringing an end to the Peloponnesian War. So I actually read this book back when I was in high school. Shout out to my high school English teacher for bringing my awareness to such a novel play. And over the past month, I've been seeing a number of women on Twitter talking about the fact that they currently have decided to be celibate because they really are struggling with the current dating culture. And so it made me think of instances in the past where women have chosen to withhold sex as sort of a act of protest. And then this play just automatically came to my mind. And so I'm really interested to give this play a reread many years later with much older and hopefully wiser eyes. And the third fiction book that I'm going to mention is Parable of the Sower, and this is by Octavia E. Butler. I think it makes the most sense for me to just read the description of this book. In 2024, with the world descending into madness and anarchy, one woman begins a fateful journey toward a better future. Lauren Olamina and her family live in one of the only safe neighborhoods remaining on the outskirts of Los Angeles. Behind the walls of their defended enclave, Lauren's father, a preacher, and a handful of other citizens tried to salvage what remains of a culture that has been destroyed by drugs, disease, war, and chronic water shortages. While her father tries to lead people on the righteous path, Lauren struggles with hyper-empathy, a condition that makes her extraordinarily sensitive to the pain of others. I'm not going to read the rest of it because it kind of has spoilers. I want to read this book for a few reasons. Octavia E. Butler is a Black science fiction writer, and I had really been wanting to explore her work. Secondly, this idea of hyper-empathy is something that I've just come across recently, and I've been wanting to explore it, and I do find fiction to be a really good sort of introductory point to learn about something like that. There is one other play that I'm hoping to get through this month, and that is Don Juan by Molière. So over the past few weeks, I've been wanting to explore this idea of seduction. Don Juan was sort of the first story that came to mind. And from my understanding, this is a classic, I believe, Spanish story about this man, Don Juan, who is very seductive and essentially just likes the idea of conquering women. From what I can tell, there are a lot of different renditions of this story, but I felt like a play was the best place to start. Plays tend to be shorter. You can probably read it in an afternoon and then just get a gist of the story. Related to this, a book that I plan to start in April but doubt I will be able to finish is The Seducer's Diary by Kierkegaard. So Kierkegaard I find a very fascinating person. He is an existentialist, but he falls within Christian conception of existentialism. And I've really been wanting to read his work, but I find him very, very challenging. So he has this one book, Either Or. My understanding on like a very high level is the first part of the book looks at how to live one's life in an aesthetic way, and it has essentially like a series of writings based on living an aesthetic life. And then the second half of the book is talking about how to live a life based on sort of moral ethics or living a moral life, and again has writings based on that. I am not going to commit myself to reading the whole book because, like I said, I find his writing style quite challenging. So I think just sticking to The Seducer's Diary already is going to be a little bit of a challenge. I've tried reading it a few times and have found it quite difficult, but I'm hoping if I give myself a month, I'll be able to get through that. So that is sort of a nice segue to the other nonfiction books that I want to read this month. The first one I probably will finish is The 100 Years' War on Palestine. I can't remember the author's name, but I will include a picture of the book. This has been very popular ever since the conflict in Israel-Palestine broke out late last year. I put this book on hold in January of this year and finally have gotten it from my library. I'm going to be listening to the audiobook. I think the title says it all. It looks at the history of Palestine, particularly the history of the conflict. I am very excited to give this a read. I've been looking for a good sort of introductory book into what's happening in Israel-Palestine, and I'm really hoping that this will be the one. So once that finishes, I'm really hoping I can reread On Palestine, which is a book I read back in December, but I just didn't really feel like I had enough of an understanding of what was going on in Israel-Palestine at the time. I also am going to do things a little bit differently this time. I feel like I've figured out how to listen to audiobooks in a much better way. So I'm hoping with my new sort of audiobook technique, I'll be able to get more out of that book. I also want to read The Black Jacobins, which is by C.L.R. James. This book looks at the revolution that took place in Haiti where they overthrew French colonialism. I always had been wanting to learn more about Haiti, especially because they were the first country to get rid of slavery and essentially have a revolution and get rid of the French colonizers. Yet the country has really struggled ever since then. And I've been wanting to learn a lot more about it. And then obviously with everything that's going on right now in Haiti, where, you know, there's no government in place, from my understanding it's gangs that have taken over the country, I feel even more inclined to really learn and understand a history of Haiti. And the last book on my April TBR is History of Sexuality by Foucault. From my understanding, this consists of 4 books. I'm only holding myself to the first book. It would be great if I could get through all 4, but that might be a little bit unrealistic. So I want to read this book for a few reasons. The main reason I want to read this book is I have been working on a video essay that I really thought I was going to be able to upload in March, and then I realized I needed to do a bit of a deep dive and understand sexuality and the history of it. I noticed from reading a lot of classic books that there tends to be a negative view of sex and sexuality. And I really became curious as to when in our society that sort of shifted and changed. And so I was looking at books that dealt with that, or even like essays, and then I came across this selection of books by Foucault. And it's funny, I've been wanting to read Foucault for a while. I've finally started reading Chomsky, who I quite enjoy, and I know that Chomsky and Foucault had a big debate, so I had wanted to understand a little bit more about Foucault's philosophy before I started looking into the debate the two of them had. A lot of what I knew about Foucault was dealing with the idea of sort of discipline and mental health. I didn't realize that he had done this really expansive study on the history of sexuality. So I actually have started listening to this. I've listened to the first chapter. I will say, for a philosopher, I really enjoy Foucault's writing. Usually I find philosophy like very challenging. It's not easy, don't get me wrong, but it's much easier than I think most philosophy books are. So the first book is an introduction. The second book is called The Use of Pleasure. The third book is called The Care of the Self. And the fourth book is called Confessions of the Flesh. And I'm really interested in the last book because it looks at the impact of Christianity on our ideas and conceptions of sex and sexuality. I'm also looking for a really good book about the Congo. I don't think I'll be able to get to it in April, but probably for May. So if anyone has any recommendations, I would really, really appreciate that. Thank you so much for watching. If you're new here, this channel is all about re-education and decolonizing the mind. I'm currently on a journey of re-education and learning new things, and I made this channel as a way to share what I'm learning with the world. So if you want to follow along with me on this journey, feel free to subscribe to my channel. Thanks once again, everyone, for watching. I really appreciate all of the love and support, and I'll see you in the next one. Bye.